Doing? Good. All right. That whole thing about the 2.5 seconds. Hold on, I can't go past the window, right?
Oh, you
I have ADD and I walk a lot, and I might need somebody to give me 4 or 5 more bottles of water because I like to stay hydrated while I'm up here. But that 2.5 seconds that you have, I actually heard a few. Last year there was a study that our average attention span for a human was about 8 seconds. And we had actually lost out by 1 second to a goldfish. So I'm not sure what that says about our society, but you have a very limited amount of time to make an impact at a trade show, anywhere else for that matter. I have $56 here. Belongs to Jason, raise your hand. Okay, so if you find any money on the floor at the end of my presentation, give it back to him, because I just borrowed it from him. But before I get started, are there any veterans in the room? Could you please stand? I wanted to take a moment and say thank you. I'm a former Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine, and I appreciate the brotherhood of veterans that we have in the community, and we should do everything we can, I believe, to support them and help them and to recognize them for their service. So, anyway, we all like this stuff called money, right? Who's in business? Raise your hand. Who works for somebody? Anyone work for a paycheck? Raise your hand. Okay? All the business owners put their hands down there. All right. So, I found that as a Marine, if my head wasn't in the game, it could be bad for my health. I found as a football coach for a number of years that if our heads weren't in the game, that also wasn't good for our health and it wasn't good for job security. Get your butts kicked. I also find that as a business owner, that if my head's not in the game, I end up wasting a lot of money. You paying attention? Just grabbing this? Then I find that I'm down to my last 20 bucks and my head wasn't in the game and I lost that too. I've been there. In fact, I've been in combat. I have 3 adopted kids. I've had a lot of scary moments in my life, but the most terrified I've ever been in my life was when I owned a painting company and I had a $40,000 payroll every month, and I would lay in bed at night, and I remember thinking, at one night I sat up in the middle of the night and I said to myself, I wasn't this afraid when I was standing in a minefield getting shot at. Honest to God truth, my heart was pounding, and business does that to you. It does it to you because there's a lot on the line. The well-being of your family is on the line. I'm a firm believer that I would rather my kids eat than my competitors' kids eat. Okay? I'm not a mean guy, but when it comes down to it, I want to kick your face in and feed my family. Anyone agree? Come on. You nod your heads acting all smug about it, but at the end of the day, you'd rather your family eat than your competitors. It all comes down to mindset. I'm going to give some practical things about working a booth, but I'm going to spend the bulk of my time talking about mindset. And my question is, will you put in the uncommon effort and the thinking and the planning that it's going to take to succeed? One of my kids is from Haiti. His name's T-Guy. He's 12 years old. He's about yay tall. And he came here, he was about yay tall. He was just turning 9. And we got here where when he was about 10 years old, we're driving down the road. And he says, Dad, I would like a big house and a shiny car. And I'm thinking, all right, well, you're in the right country for that, because you can have that. In Haiti, you probably couldn't have that. And he'd been here about a year, and I said, look, it's going to take 2 things, man. I said, number 1, you're going to have to learn how to read. He didn't like to read. All right, he'd never been in school, and that was a struggle. So I said, you're going to have to learn how to read. And he nods his head, and I said, the other thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to work really, 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 really hard. Tell you about his work ethic. We've nicknamed him Comfort. Okay, so I touched on 2 points for him. Number 1, you got to learn how to read. Number 2, you got to work really hard if you want to have what you want to have. driving down the road and he glances out the window and I'm over here and I could tell he's deep in thought. And he turns and he looks at me, he's kind of biting his lip, and he looks up at me right into my eyes, and I knew I was about to win Parent of the Year award. He says, "Dad," I said, "Yeah, buddy." He says, "I think I'm good with a small house." See, Tiga was unwilling to put the work in. He was unwilling to put the work in. And if you're not willing to put the work in your business, whether it's for a trade show or for a sales call or for anything else, you're not going to get what you want. Who wants to get what they want? Every hand should be up, right? Okay? But if you really want to know if you want to get what you want, will you put the work in? That's how you really know if you want what you want is really what you want. I don't even have any idea what I just said there. But it's going to take a couple things to rock this show. All right? First thing is your mindset. We've talked about that a little bit. There's two mindsets I want you to consider. The first is your mindset going into the show. I've worked with, coached bankers and chiropractors and contractors and publishing companies. I've worked with a lot of different industries, spoken to a lot of different groups. The bulk of my business ownership experience was building a painting company from a 10 by 10 room in my basement with no revenue to, in our first 2.5 years, to about 900,000. And then beyond that, we've gone on to do several $1 million worth of sales through the years. And the bulk of my experience of running a business, lying awake at night, freaking out, working trade shows, was in the painting industry. And so there's some mindset things that I've learned from there. And the first is, you've got to have the mindset that you were at that show to work. You're there to work. It's funny that we even need to say that, but I've been at shows. I remember I did this show up at Pheasant Run a few years ago, one of our first shows, and next to me was a siding company, and across from me was a landscaping company. The siding guys were employees of the company, and they spent the bulk of their time hitting on girls, chasing tail, going to the snack area, okay, all this other stuff. And on 3 or 4 occasions, I had to go find them because people were waiting at the booth. All right. Now, if you're an employee, you're probably going to be mad at me right now. If you're a business owner, you're going to think I'm really cool. If you have employees working the booth, personally, I would tie the performance of the day to them getting paid. Somehow, some way. Because I'm not in the business, you were throwing that money around, I'm not in the business of people there wasting my time and money as a business owner. That's yourself included. You're there to work. What is it, 9 to 2? That's at least like 14 hours or something, right? No, what is that? Okay, it's 5 hours, right? 9 to 2. Can you be focused for 5 hours? Can you be all in for 5 hours? I think you can, and I think your employees can, but they have to be held to that expectation. The hardscape guys, the landscape guys that were across from me, remember I said there were 2 people? The landscape guys, these 2 guys stood there and they were hungry. You could tell they were there to work. I remember one time one of the people at our booth said, "Hey, you guys want to break, run down the hallway or get something to drink or whatever?" These guys were like 2 camels out there, man. They wouldn't take a water break. The only thing they threw in their mouth all day was breath mints, and they didn't move. And they were engaging, and guess what? They left that show with about 150 leads. They were there to work. Who are you going to be? You're going to be the siding guys, or are you going to be the landscape guys going after it? The other part of your mindset has got to be really back to, what is my goal for the day? Without a clear objective in anything, we don't hit anything. You hit what you aim at. You could have a goal that day to sell stuff, like those cookware people, right? You ever see those cookware people at shows? What do they want to do? They want to sell the cookware today. That's their goal. Okay? Anyone want to share a goal they have for the day that's not sales? What would your goal be? That's not selling something that day.
To just let people know that I'm there.
Okay? Letting people know that you're there, that you exist.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's okay if that's your goal.